Today we're going to have the Mbali Iziko Super Explorer, a comic celebrating Earth Day presentation as part of our Goethe-Institut Namibia's Digitalization of Culture conference. I'd like you to please help me welcome our speakers for today, Amy and Robin. We also have Mazi, who's a little bit delayed, but he will be joining us in a few minutes. Amy is an exhibition designer at Iziko Museums of South Africa. Mazi is a founder of his skills sharing community development project called Mazi Art and Design Creative School. And Robin runs her own small business called Schism, which helps curators, educators, and students create content for public engagement. Now, for this specific project, it came into fruition because in 2020, celebration of Earth Day, Iziko South African Museums intended to develop a small mobile exhibit to inspire the public and highlight general climate action research done by the museum. However, as we all know, due to COVID-19 and the pandemic, the physical exhibit was then adapted to a digital format based on the modern day web comic. So I'll have Amy and Robin and eventually Mazi take over for now, and we'll hear some more about it.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So good day and welcome, and thank you so much for having us. I'm here today with my colleagues Ngosingipile Mazibuko, known as Mazi. He is stuck in the airport. His flight got significantly delayed and sends his apologies. He's trying to get on right now. And Robin Simmons. Today we'll be talking about the adventures of Mbali, Iziko's Super Explorer, and our own adventures of turning an exhibit into a webcomic during COVID-19. We suggest this new way of digitizing exhibitions is an effective media to capture and share virtual exhibition content, which has some benefits over other 3D digitizing techniques. We invite you to explore this promising medium and how we went about this adaptation.
So a little bit of backstory to how we got started on this project. It was initially a pop-up exhibit for the Earth Day 2020 showcase at the museum. It was originally supposed to be an intern project where we would showcase specific objects and tell a little bit of the story behind it, but then we developed it into its own exhibition of its own right. We decided to focus on themes such as stewardship and inspiration based on conservation work, and really create a sense of empathy for the environment by showcasing specific stories. And we wanted to create awareness for the research which was being conducted at the back end of the museum that featured climate change and climate action. We wanted the takeaways of this exhibit to be positive, and we wanted the children, particularly who interact with this exhibit, to see how there are changes in the environment, but how there are communities which are making a difference and how they could interact and get in contact with those communities, and also understand climate change without becoming afraid. And so to really target and engage with that specific audience, we decided to use the comic book aesthetic and create a voice of the exhibition, which was the character Mbali. So a little bit about Mbali. She's a particular favorite of us. She is supposed to represent the typical South African child. We wanted her to be relatable to everybody in our country. So we decided to give her a superhero costume, which people could relate to, which was our school uniform. This is a very basic school uniform that most government schools would be aware of. So it's something that anybody could relate to. And we wanted to distance ourselves from some of the superhero costumes, which are very steeped in sort of American culture. And then we also wanted to drive home that feeling that she was going on a hero's journey, that she was imperfect, but she was learning and she wanted to become better and was inspired by this learning process. And we wanted her superhero ability to essentially be her curiosity, her own sort of human nature, rather than a superhero power. But then, unfortunately, COVID-19 happened, and our little superhero had to adapt to this new supervillain and new threat, and to do this, we had to essentially change her form. And to do this was particularly challenging because at the time I was developing certain physical aspects of the exhibit. So that was stuck in my kitchen at home. Other parts of the physical exhibit were in lockdown at the museum. So physically bringing together the pop-up exhibit was impossible. And we couldn't digitize it in a three-dimensional format that many exhibitions were being sort of scanned and rendered in. So we had to sort of revisit ideas of how we're going to digitize it. And we thought that, well, since we have all these comic book elements, why not just make a web comic?
And I'm on mute. Okay. So we did. We turned it into a webcomic. Our incredibly talented illustrator, Ngozi Mazi, he did the character design, and we just loved Mbali. And it was one of the reasons why we really wanted to see this through and see it in a webcomic format. And as Robin said, we just didn't have the access to the physical space to do anything else. The graphic novel web comic was going to be one of the quicker ways we could actually see this in the public's hands. And we thought it was going to be an effective medium. One of the things we liked about it that an exhibition didn't have was that a web comic would allow us to use the linear narrative style. So that was going to be very helpful for us to tell and sort of curate the story in a specific way. And the thing that we found very appealing was that this would allow us to have a very small file size, and it would be very easy to distribute. This was at the very beginning of lockdown. We weren't too sure what people's finances were going to look like. Everyone was worried about business. Data was an issue. Everyone was going online, working online. Some companies hadn't kind of worked out what the data packages they'd be sharing with their colleagues would be. So we really wanted to make this as cheap as possible and as shareable as possible. So we really intentionally developed this to be best suited to be read on your phone and to be forwarded via WhatsApp. And an unexpected outcome of this was that this personal WhatsApp format gave us a lot more feedback than we got on social media. It was really personal, which was quite wonderful. So yeah, if we zoom out and we just look at it in relation to some of the other digital things we've done at Iziko in terms of digitizing exhibitions, our panoramic tours, such as the Tata Madiba exhibition, which we're speaking of later, I think on Wednesday, and the Boonstra virtual exhibits, they really preserve the experience of touring an actual physical exhibition. The Tata Madiba also had 3D objects that you could pan through, and videos and podcasts. And this medium really, it conserved the experience of an exhibit and the experience of the space. But it was very time consuming and expensive, and we had a very little budget for this, and we had no access to the physical exhibition. Looking ahead, web content is something we developed early on in lockdown too. And this was designed for participation and to feed into the co-curated content, feeding it into the physical exhibition. It was more of a video exploration with some take-home activities and a story sharing platform. We also had some straightforward exhibition web style exhibits with videos and 3D models, such as the Say Jose exhibit here. And yeah, so this form of webcomic was very unconventional to what we have been doing, but we found it to be very relevant and relatable and easy to share with our target audience. It also suited our themes and our takeaways. It's a very emotionally heavy topic. Climate change really is. So to turn it into a fun comic book made sense to us. But we did feel the loss of the interactive aspect, and the physical object, is really core to exhibits and to museums. And these 3D tours were more immersive. They had a stronger sense of adventure, with a bit of consideration and comic theory. We really spent some time building the relationship to the object And we did this by relying really heavily on the interactions Mbali had with the objects throughout the story. We also redesigned the interactive activities so they could become activities that could be done at home. This was a time the schools weren't really sure what they were doing. Moms and dads were stuck with kids, and we thought, okay, well, you know, we have these public programs, we have ideas of it. Let's just turn this into something that can help a parent, really.
So a little bit more about what the role children was in our exhibit, because it's been historically quite difficult for people to approach talking about these very thematically dark and challenging topics to children, particularly ones where it's about future hazards, future challenges. And often in historical purposes, we've sort of resorted to nursery rhymes and bedtime stories to try and break down these themes for young people. And part of the way that people have done this in the past is through comic books. If we look back through history, some of the Superman and Captain America comics that came out in the 1930s, this was in the wake of the Great Depression and through that rising fear of sort of the Nazi regime in Europe at the time and World War II. And they were still able to capture the fears of the general public and still break them down for young people and have positive takeaways that they could take away from the stories. And even the modern adaptations of these comics, like the Marvel Avengers movies, they still draw on those overwhelming public fears. In the modern movies, it's less about war and more about overpopulation and the strain of diminishing natural resources. But they can still take those very thematically dark topics and break them down for young people that can walk away from those stories with really positive takeaways. And part of that is because the comic book has a number of tools which allow you to sort of develop themes with positive emotions that don't really have to contain a lot of the darker content. You can use things like, for example, the aesthetics, the color to influence the mood and sort of make it lighter. And it's also much more visually engaging for children, so they can be drawn to certain aspects of your story without having to go into some of the facts that would usually inspire fear. You could also use comedy. I had a lot of fun in the initial design of finding ways to take Muzzy's character and put her in strange spots. Not only does it help with the storytelling, but that little bit of comedy just lightens the theme so much. And then also the character development itself. Having that face in the exhibition story makes it a lot more relatable to young people, because often when it comes to these sort of broader topics like climate change, they affect millions of people and they affect many countries and many societies in negative ways. But when you break it down to a single person facing these challenges, single activities that this person has to achieve to sort of help with this large, very looming problem, it becomes a lot more engaging, and there's a lot more positive takeaways you can take from the singular person, rather than trying to address the multiple fears of a nation or a country or the globe. Though this is changing, we do recognize that the younger generation is actually more politically aware and environmentally outspoken than we suspected. So this might not be the case for future content, but we wanted to hone in on the words of Carl Sagan, which is the visions that we offer our children shape the future. So we still felt like we needed to give them that positive image of what climate action can be, the inspiring stories that they can follow and create positive images of the future without sort of giving them these images of just fear and frustration and hopelessness. So let's talk a little bit more about how this all came together, because it was quite the process. So firstly, we had to replace our physical objects, which was a little bit hard sore, because especially with the paleontological content, having the bones and having the physical objects there is a story of its own. And so we had to photograph these and tweak them in Photoshop to sort of get that image as beautiful as it possibly could be. And to the great credit of the curators and the staff at the museum, they do have fantastic photo archives that we could use to do this. We also relied quite heavily on Creative Commons. So part of what we're working on, we could draw images from other museums, which allowed us to sort of broaden our audience a little bit more. And then we could also use some of the digital collections that were being developed by, for example, the entomology department. They were developing behind the scenes their own online sort of network called WASP Web. So we could sort of use some of the images and photos from their development. And then we also had to sort of develop our own additional information, so that we found that there were certain elements of the story which required a little bit more storytelling. They needed their own specific images to sort of build some of that drama and comic book feeling. So we actually relied a little bit more heavily on Muzzy and his artistic skill, and he came up with some really incredible illustrations for us that we could use, particularly in the paleontology section, where we did feel the absence of having the fossils actively there. And also our partners were very generous in the sense that, particularly Saya, I don't know if you can see the beautiful fish, they have beautiful watercolor illustrations, and because we were developing this specifically for education, they allowed us to use a lot of their images in as part of our comic. I think Amy can now talk a little bit more about the creating of the social media part of this process.
Yeah, so as Robin said, we had Muz as the illustrator, we had Louis and Devon who were searching for all those images, contacting curators, finding specific images, doing content checks, or checking that the curators could do content checks for us. And then Robin and I, sort of on the graphic design side, I was adapting Robin's exhibition graphics that she had actually, well, they would already been sent to the printer. And while I was actually turning those into the webcomic, Robin was doing all of the spin-offs and the social media posts and the take-home activities for children. So we had like a solid team. We're on Google Drive, we had our WhatsApp group, I was in the mountains with no cell phone reception. It was an interesting time. And the team also did all the testing. We really spent some time making sure our resolution was good, and that it was easy to share on WhatsApp and easy to read on various phones, which helps when you have a big group to test that. It was a matter of trial and error, WhatsApping each other very late into some of the evenings. Yeah, so for our socials, Robin did a series of fun facts related to the exhibition. And then she also did 3 take-home activities. So on the right, you can see some of the fun facts. And I do believe that those were Creative Commons images. Yeah, and then for the takeaways, we wanted to preserve some of the public program activities that we would have been offering at the opening and around the exhibition time. We wanted children to have access to the activities. Yep.
Sorry, I can't see your screen. I don't know if it was because I went out or...
Can everyone else see my screen?
No, we can't see.
No. Okay, let me reshare. Is it there now? No. Can you guys see?
Yes. I see it.
Okay, there we go. Where were we? Okay, so on the right there, you can see the fun fact social media.
Sorry,
post.
can I disturb? I've yeah, now it's gone. There was something on top of your shared screen, but now it's fine.
Yeah, no, I have managed to move it. I hope would have
Yes,
been
everything's good now.
Cool. Yeah. So on the right were the fun facts. On the left were the take homes. I really love this how to make a dragon pond, and they all spoke to the exhibition. The fun facts also spoke to the takeaways, and we spoke earlier about how we felt the need to help parents with things at home to do with their kids. The one over here was how to make an eco brick. So small things that kept people positive. Smile, you're a survivor. You survived the mass extinction. And really things that were positive, things that could make people feel like they could make a change. Like climate change wasn't completely overwhelming, that we all have a role to play and we have things that we can do.
Yes, the diagram. So when we were trying to break down what the potential was for these online exhibits, we decided we wanted to actually present it more as a feedback. A lot of people were worried that online exhibitions were going to replace the feet going through the door into museums. Why would you want to visit an exhibition when you can just Google it and walk through it virtually? But we disagreed. We think that even though there are pressures to put online exhibition material up, think that it's going to eventually start evolving in two separate ways. So your online exhibition material will evolve into content which will be more story rich. You have a lot more mediums to play with in the online environment. You can create comics which are very narrative driven. You can create YouTube clips which have got a much more diverse audience. You can have little podcasts, all of which can feed into your physical space. And at the same time, your physical space can become a stepping stone to your online content. And so we thought of this sort of the circular loop where your physical space will introduce activities which will sort of engage the learners walking through that space, which will draw them into the extra content which is hosted online. And then that online content, which might have a much broader audience, will sort of increase the profile of the museum or the institute of the exhibition. And that will attract more visitors through the door. So we envisioned it as a positive feedback loop rather than one competing with the other. We wanted to sort of explore the idea that these are going to have to coexist for a significant period of time, and that online content has its place and it could be very complementary and a very powerful tool for physical exhibits. And in terms of our museum, we were the first online exhibition that was a different format and it sort of exhibited slightly different content and a different narrative to the physical exhibition. It also shows that there's been a bunch of studies that show that especially your online exhibitions, they have a broader reach. About 70% of people can actually have said that they have visited or interacted with the museum's online portfolio in terms of its website, whether it's a social media, but people very rarely have the opportunity to physically walk into a museum, and about only 11% of our South African population has had the opportunity within a year to actually visit a museum. So your online exhibitions can create more publicity and more engagement for your physical spaces. And then the second part of this loop is the back end of the museum, because what we found with developing our content was that creating content for the online space made us rethink a whole bunch of assets, bring in other bits of stories, create a narrative. So then those assets and those stories can actually sort of feed back to the physical content. We can update the physical exhibit. It can have more publicity. It refreshes the physical exhibit. And at the same time, while we're developing online content, we're drawing in from other projects so they become a little bit more publicized, like the WASP Web, like Citizen Science. We're drawing on their content as well and helping their projects to develop. And then we also all sort of working off of each other's enthusiasm and sharing and getting publicity for each other. So it sort of strengthens the back end of the museum where we're all trying to develop public engagement projects together. So yeah, our process really showed us that there is value to these online spaces, and that there's by creating an online version of your exhibit, you do access a much larger audience and strengthen your own public engagement profile.
Great. Thank you so much. I just want to welcome Mazi. He's joined us.
Oh, Mazi.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. And sorry for being late on this presentation, but I believe my team did well to explain this beautiful exhibition. And yeah, I'm around now, and I believe that I'll be available to take any questions.
Yes.
Thank you, Tim.
Yes, I'll just remind our attendees that you can ask questions in the Q&A section, and then our panelists will address those questions. But I had a question. I can't remember if you mentioned it before, if I actually do know this information, but how long did it take from the process of, oh my goodness, the pandemic hit, we can't actually do this physical exhibit, to creating this webcomic? And 2 months? Oh, wow. Okay.
Weeks.
Oh,
2
2
weeks.
weeks. Wow.
2 weeks of very little sleep.
That's actually quite fast, and wow.
Team of 5, and a
Mhm.
huge part of that was that we designed the exhibit with the comic look and feel. So we
Yes.
had all the assets, it was there, we had Mbali in all of her different positions, we had the story, but it was a hard 2 weeks with everyone in the team pulling long nights and a lot of work. But that said, it also was not anywhere near as costly as any of our other exhibits, and much shorter than any of the other exhibits we've digitized.
Okay, so then my next question then is, were you eventually going to create a comic book for Mbali, or was it just going to be a physical exhibit in the museum? And that was it.
It was on the cards, but realistically, we probably wouldn't have. We're all understaffed, you know, the general museum, it was like, oh, this would be so great, and now actually because of it, we are in discussions to make more comics with Mbali that are related to exhibitions we're working on at the moment. We've had amazing feedback internally and from other people too. So I think she's going to become an ambassador.
Yes, yeah. That's also what I was going to ask. Are you going to create more comics or exhibits based on Mbali exploring? Because this was now the topic of climate change and what can we do to save the earth and help. Would you then consider, or maybe you already have, having Mbali explore other aspects, not just climate change, but also, I mean, I can't really think of it off the top of my head right now, but other topics that she could.
Yes, absolutely. We've got 2 exhibitions in the cards, and I mean, we could do it with other topics too. I think the one thing that made us able to pull this off in 2 weeks was that we had the narrative. We had worked through everything. We really knew what our target was. We knew what we wanted to say. We knew how we wanted to say it. There's 2 options I see that would work really well. The one is to pair it with an exhibition, because then you've also worked through those things. You have that sense. But the other option is just to decide to use her to tell a story that you don't necessarily want to exhibit. They will take more time, and you need someone like Robin on your team who is a science communicator, because one of the powerful things about her is that she is so accessible. And it's not just that we've taken these big scientific concepts and we've put them next to an accessible character in a comic book style. What she says and how she says it and what is behind her, the full design, is very much about science communication. So those things take a while.
Yeah.
You're right. And I think we're quite clear that we want her to be done properly, because she needs to be accessible.
Definitely. I see Goethe-Institut, Detlef, has his hand raised, so he perhaps has a question.
Yes, I had to raise my hand because I can't ask a question in the Q&A session as host. So I've got 2 questions actually. The one question is, could you imagine that if Mbali can cross also borders and visit museums outside South Africa, for example, Namibia, just visit an exhibition?
Hi, that would be cool.
Wow, that will be nice.
Could
yeah,
you?
We're very open to that. Very open to that. Okay.
Yeah. Because maybe sometimes we have exhibitions also at the Goethe-Institut, and we have contact to the museum or the National Theatre or art gallery, whatever.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that science, biodiversity, culture. Up until we created these nation states, these borders didn't exist. So if we really want to go explore, you know, our histories are so interwoven, it makes complete sense.
Okay, that we have that in mind, and maybe also the listeners, they watching the records as well, maybe might be interesting. And my second question, maybe I've missed it, maybe you talked about, but do you have any statistics, how many people you reached and were watching Mbali?
That was the one downside to sending it via WhatsApp. It was quite hard to get the statistics, or I would say we couldn't get the statistics. We sent it through to educators who then sent it on to classes and parents. So we expected went quite far. The kind of feedback we got, it was very well received, and it came from various groups. But no, we couldn't follow statistics with WhatsApp. I've watched another exhibition that went fully WhatsApp too. And my experience of that is it's actually incredibly intimate, but probably in some ways more far-reaching for the small time it is in a group. But again, it's not like you can do on social, Facebook, and just download what you need to know.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe Mazibuko would like to. Actually, I don't know, what is the surname?
The surname is Mazibuko.
Mazibuko.
Yeah. Maybe you can also let us know how you pronounce your first name, your Christian name.
Yes.
Because it's quite a challenge.
Yes. So my name is Goethe-Institut. So my surname is Mazibuko. So that's why I go by the name Mazi. And yeah, to answer one of your questions when we talk about where you ask us looking at Mbali to make Mbali to also go into different museums and to different spaces. For us, we believe that Mbali is a super explorer. So that will be like really amazing to see that happening, and to see that even other places they can reach, and also they can have this feel of maybe developing such characters, you know, that will also talk about science and also make science communication more fun and more easy access, and also give them a platform that they can also go and also just do amazing things that Mbali is doing. And we believe in our team. We had this goal of seeing Mbali where she is now, because we, even when we're planning, we had this thing of, okay, this is what this is our goal, but it just went so amazing. And immediately when we see it, and to see it online, and also to see the final product of it each and every day, it's something that we look at, and we're so proud of it. And even now where it is today, and we believe even from now on, it will also go to reach even those kids that haven't even get a platform to even witness or see Mbali. So it's something that is really amazing. And as we live in a digital world whereby everything is so digital and easy access, and I believe this platform like this will make this happen. And we believe that it's also going to communicate in a way that it's also a general knowledge, it's a general communication. When you talk about, even we did this during lockdown, and it was really not a good time because we hardly see each other as a team, but we use our digital platform to communicate and also to make this possible.
Yes, thank you, Mazi.
I don't know, Robin could also add to that, because she had some ideas of meeting up with other characters, as Mazi mentioned. Robin, since Mbali, we actually have another Mbali on the scene too, and we have another 2 characters down in Cape Town, am I right?
Yep, so there's been, our the Cape Nature organization has a physical Mbali, so it's a girl that goes around with part of their tours, and so that's a very cute character. So it's a physical character we could potentially interact with and maybe tag up with them. Also, some of our partners were really interested in sort of having spin-off comics like Sandcob with the penguins, and then Mbali can go and like interact with the penguins, and they also have an incredibly rich illustration bank that we could sort of draw on, and they were really great partners to work with. And part of our exhibition was talking about all their efforts and projects. So it'd be really great to give back to them and have a bit of a spin-off with them. And then we also had Sandcob, which also had their beautiful fish illustrations, and they gave us so many wonderful interactive activities to do with children on the physical exhibition. And so it'd be wonderful to have an exhibition or a comic featuring them and Mbali learning about, protecting the ocean and overfishing and how we can do this sustainably. It would be really great to feature them in the comic. So there's so many opportunities, and even within the museum there's a lot of characters which have been developed in the past for exhibitions. And so this could be an opportunity to sort of bring all these little stories together and create a wonderful little comic book.
One thing I didn't mention is Muzzy is a Super Striker veteran. I don't know if you guys know Super Striker. It's a very
I loved Super Striker. I loved it. So when I read his bio and I saw that, I was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah. And one of the things he taught me was that Super Striker had actually been used. The team had developed comics for mine safety, and the statistics around how they'd actually managed to enhance the safety of mines through comic books was wild. I don't remember the stats, but I just remember going, wow, this really does work.
Yeah, because like as we're talking now, I was just thinking of like Mbali can talk about like ocean conservation, talk about like you mentioned the penguins. She can explore every aspect of the world. She doesn't have to just be in one spot. Like we said, she's welcome to come to Namibia and explore whatever she can here.
Hopefully the flights aren't going to be delayed like Muzzy's was today.
Yes, hopefully not.
Yeah,
maybe she can talk about that. Maybe Mbali can talk about flight delays.
Yes, because we believe another thing that I like with Mbali as Mbali is this girl that always, even me as a young adult now, but I still relate to, even I know we're the ones who created this, but I feel like sometimes I can use her powers and just make it possible for her to reach comics and have a lot of information that she can speak about, but I believe it's all about meeting people, and also because it really, honestly, another thing that it's so challenging, it was really the beat stages where it was so challenging, where we had a lot of information we want to say in a little space, so you find that other information that we wanted to bring into Mbali, the exhibition of Mbali, we have to just put aside, and stuff like that, because now we had deadlines of reaching it, and we were like, okay, it's still locked down, and we have to make sure that we bring this Mbali to life, So I believe in a matter of from now on, it's just trying to also have maybe some more time, and also have a lot of interesting facts and all things that she can talk about, and I believe it can reach a lot of people. But most of these things, they really need time. It was really a time consuming. It can sound like it was just 2 weeks, but each and every second was really it's like each and every second it could count, because it's so important. I remember even when we did some sketch, by sketching, it really was like, okay, we had this idea, but to bring an idea that was just the words to life, it really take a lot of time. But with the experience that we have as a team, as even the illustrator, the designers, and also the scientists, and everyone that was part of this. It's all about just dedication and also experience that we have individually, because without those experience, it will take even more time. But we believe we did manage to tackle it in that time. And we believe that we've been working together, we managed to bring this beautiful comic exhibition that we talk about now. Thanks.
Yes, it's very beautiful. You guys created something wonderful that can now, as you said, it can be sent through WhatsApp and it can be emailed. It's very accessible during this time of digitalization and social distancing and not being able to actually physically go into the museum or into a library where you can get a book there. But I just want to thank you all for joining us today. And if you have any last thoughts, questions, then we can wrap it up and conclude it for today and thank our wonderful panelists.
She's still online, just saying she's still online if you want to go and read her for yourself. So we'll have to give you the web address for anybody who's tuning in.
Yes, definitely.
Maybe can you share the web address again?
I'll do it right now. She's not great to read online. She wasn't developed to scroll through like this, but it is available like this.
Maybe you can put it in the chat.
You put it in the chat and you can share
Has
it.
everyone got the link there?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can also just Google Mbali Iziko and you will find it.
Okay.
Oh, and I'm going to do, Mazi, do you want to add your handle? It's at MaziBornArt. Eh?
Yes, thank you.
Go have a look at his illustrations.
Thank you for that.
I'm very proud to have him on the Iziko team.
And actually, I'm looking forward for a workshop in Windhoek with Mazi. We still have to talk about that. And if he's available in January or end of January, beginning February, would like to invite you. Do you remember?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sure we have some Super Striker fans who would want to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, I'd like to thank you, Robin, Amy, and Mazi, for joining us today and sharing the story and sharing your process, the challenges, the successes, and everything that you went through. And I congratulate you on that. And I also want to wish you luck for the future, for maybe some future comics that you will be creating other than in Mbali, and whatever your future endeavors and job takes you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us. And I'm always available on email if anyone wants to contact us.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
So next event, I would just like to tell about our next event at 6 o'clock. It's about audio version from a Namibian children book that it's called Nehoya and the Crocodile, African traditional story. We made in an audio version at 6 o'clock Namibian time. Okay, thank you. Bye.
All right, thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.